All right, man. So, welcome to another episode of Rybarian Radio. Let's start off with an intro and let me know who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Great. My name is Robin Macapagal, and I'm a personal trainer and a part owner of a gym called Apex Barbell Club in Burlington, Ontario. Um, I am one of three owners, and we mostly focus on powerlifting, but we do have some gym pump clients, and we do have an athletic trainer here as well.
That's awesome. And how long have you guys been operating now?
2 years and going on our third year.
That's awesome. So,
Mhm.
I mean, opening a gym is a big endeavor and something I'd want to get into a little bit later on, talk about that.
Nice.
But I mean, why don't we start off with kind of just telling me about how you first got into fitness, how you first fell in love with lifting? Want to hear a little bit about that?
Nice. Well, when I was younger, I skateboarded and longboarded and biked basically everywhere. And then when I was 18, I got my driver's license and I got my hands on a car. So from there, I stopped doing any kind of exercise and just kept eating and eating and eating. And then on my birthday, uh, you mentioned this before, the lasagna moment. I ate a whole entire family-sized pan of lasagna on my birthday before noon. So it probably would have been only about 2 hours. I ate a full family-sized pan of lasagna, and I was like, "Wow, I'm fat." Wow.
That's
Um,
awesome. I love that.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
It's such like it's so funny when you can attribute like a big change in your life to like a very specific event and
yeah.
feeling, right? So like,
Mhm.
was it kind of like, was it in the moment where it was like just kind of right after you finished where you're just like, damn, like I need to make some changes? Or was it like the next day when you kind of looked
It
back on
was
it or?
it was like right after, cause right after I got the last piece of lasagna. I like put it on my plate and then I realized there was none left. And my mom was like, "Oh, it's your birthday, so like you can have a little bit of this, but make sure that there's enough for everybody else." And I literally ate all of it. It was
That's
wild.
awesome.
Um, and then also something that I noticed at that time, I stopped taking pictures. So I subconsciously knew that I was fat, or subconsciously knew that I was larger than I ever have been. I
Yeah.
just wasn't a part of pictures. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Like you kind of started to be less comfortable with your image, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, sometimes it's not until you see that's weird because I've had moments like that too, where I'm just in the middle of a dirty bulk and then I
Yeah,
see a picture of myself and like, man, this has gone way too far.
yeah. It's
We
time
need to
to turn it back.
scale this back.
Yeah,
I can actually think of a specific moment. I had one like that where I was at I was out for sushi, I think, with it was my wife, but my girlfriend at the time, and we were out for sushi with her family, and someone took a picture of me and her sitting there, and I remember seeing the picture, and we still kind of like reference it today as the sushi picture.
nice.
And I was just like, all you can eat sushi, right? So just like super stuffed. It was summer, so I was like kind of sweaty, just like super bloated, that soy sauce bloat,
Yeah,
just feeling like crap. And I remember that seeing that picture. I'm like, yeah, it's time to scale it back a little bit. So
yeah.
yeah, that's funny that lasagna is delicious though. Lasagna is one of those things that it's very easy to
Oh yeah,
overeat.
oh yeah. And like everybody thinks that their mom makes the best lasagna, and for me, my mom makes the best lasagna. I could eat that forever.
Oh yeah.
I can kind of also attribute that to like why I have like a lactose intolerance now as well, because I haven't like I didn't have it until I was like 25 or 26. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, maybe part of this was from like me being larger was from bloating as well, because I would like she would make me lasagna like every week, and I would eat it like every week until
Oh yeah.
the moment.
Oh, that's yeah. I mean, that's something that I recognized as I got older too. Somewhat of a
Mhm.
lactose intolerance, and sometimes you don't notice that you're sensitive to some of these things until you cut it out, and
Yeah.
then you realize kind of like you can see the change that it has on your body, right?
hmm hmm
So kind of so after kind of that moment, what were some of the changes that you started to make in your lifestyle?
Um, I started like not actually working out. I started just with jogging. Um, I started like cowering the internet for like all things I could find of like what supplements I should take, what I should be eating, and I like went through a lot of different fads. I was vegan for about 6 months,
Hmm.
which was very, very enlightening about how many vegetables I can and can't eat. Um, and then from there, I started going to my local Y, and then at my local Y, I met a power lifter, and then that power lifter slowly got me like away from like bodybuilding, and then into powerlifting.
Interesting. So that kind of one person had a big influence on you kind of early on in your
Oh
lifting
yeah,
career, right?
oh yeah. hmm Everyone at the Y called him Powerlifter Mike because that's literally all he did. But he was also like built like a bodybuilder, and like he was just like bodybuilding and powerlifting go hand in hand sort of situation. And I learned a lot from him in terms of like how much hypertrophy a powerlifter should be doing versus
Right.
like how much like the normal powerlifter does, and then vice versa, how much strength training a bodybuilder actually does, like a high end bodybuilder, and how much they actually lift because it's a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of crossover between the two, for sure, right?
Mhm.
And just kind of like that in between, that power building kind of
Yeah.
in between mix of the two, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and some of the top bodybuilders obviously have been crazy strong. Like if you think back, like Ronnie Coleman or
Oh yeah.
whatnot, or like what's his name, Stan Efferding or whatever his name
hmm
is. Um, some of those guys, like they start off in powerlifting and then they kind of like once in a while transition into bodybuilding, but the two go hand in hand for sure.
hmm
So what was it about kind of powerlifting that made you fall in love with that and want to switch to that as more of a typical as a opposed to more of a typical bodybuilding approach?
In terms of goals, it's much more like solidified in like numbers, whereas like bodybuilding is like it's much more detrimental to like my thought process of like, oh, I'm not big enough, I need to get bigger. Oh, I'm not this, I'm that. And like for
A little bit of
powerlifting, it's like,
body dysmorphia goals.
oh, 100%. I have body dysmorphia like crazy, which like a lot of people get throughout their fitness life, but then
Oh yeah.
it's more of a like oh like I know I have it and I know that I'm not actually like this, so I just need to tone it down in my brain a little bit. But like numbers have been really really like cool to look at in my opinion, and being able to be like oh like I can bench this much more than I did a few weeks ago, or I can squat this for many more reps than I used to, and stuff like that. Really really caught my eye more than any other kind of fitness goal.
Yeah, like it's super quantifiable, right?
hmm
Which is cool. And yeah, like kind of what you said about the body dysmorphia. I think everyone, who's into fitness and trains like has some level of body dysmorphia, right?
hmm
But I think there's definitely a certain amount that's healthy. It's just like I don't like the way I look and I would like to look better, so I'm going to work on myself. And like that's
Yes.
okay. As
hmm
long as it's sort of not coming from a place where like you're feeling super insecure about yourself and constantly comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's always going to be someone bigger. There's always going to be someone who's more shredded, who looks better than you.
Absolutely.
And then just like comparing yourself to other people's bodies and trying to say like, oh, I want to look like them. Like you'll never look exactly like them. You could train
Yeah.
like them, but just from genetics and biomechanics and whatnot, like you're just not
hmm
going to have the same body as them. It's about just working on yourself and becoming kind of a better version of yourself, and that's healthy, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but it's
Also
hard for
like
some people.
yeah, as you age as well um in like your like fitness growth, like the longer you do whatever your sport is, or like if you're doing bodybuilding or like volleyball even or like basketball, you start to care less about the people around you because you start to compete with just yourself. And
Yep.
that's the biggest thing for me this past year. I'm literally just competing with myself. Like I would say that I would be, but I really wouldn't be. I would be like, no, yeah, this is just for me. But in my head, I was like, oh, I'm like 10th out of this whole entire competition. And then
hmm
like as I got better and like as I aged in like powerlifting, I was like, I don't really care about this anymore. And when I stopped caring, I stopped getting out of my head, and then I actually started getting better.
Yeah, that's I think that's across like not just with lifting, but that's just life in general,
hmm
right? Like as you get older, I think you stop caring about what people think a little bit
Yeah.
more.
hmm
Um, I actually had this conversation with with my wife the other day. because her little sister was messaging her asking her about something school related with friends, and oh, this what's this person going to think about me? I don't want to seem like a loser kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about that, like you just think like now that you're older, you think of how insignificant that is, and it's like who the hell cares, man, right? What what
Yeah.
what those people think of you.
Hmm.
But especially when you're a preteen and teenager, it matters so much to you what
Hmm.
everyone around you thinks. And I was thinking about kind of like I wonder if there's some kind of an evolutionary biology kind of thing at play there, where it's like when you're young, it's like fitting in with the tribe is so important because like you have no life skills.
Oh
So if
yeah.
you get ostracized by the group and kicked out of the tribe at that age, you're screwed because there's no way you could survive on your own, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a cool way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I like to do stuff like that where I sort of like think of what was this like in tribal times? Like how does this behavior make sense? Because
Hmm.
we haven't really evolved that much in the last few hundred years, but the way we live
Yeah.
has changed so much, right? So I think it's a cool way of explaining things sometimes if you look back like that.
Yeah.
So what are you training for right now? Like what is your training look like? Do you have any specific goals right now? Because I know you're obviously doing some competitions and whatnot, but
Hmm.
anything
I'm
specific?
I'm currently competing competing in Fall Fury in Guelph, run by Francesco and Sarah Catalano. They've been a part of powerlifting in Ontario for quite some time, and they just started hosting meets. They're located in Guelph. They're really, really awesome people. They hosted their first meet in, oh God, when was it? I think it was March, and it was super good. It was a really, really nice big one. At Apex we do like really good small ones, like 30 people, like max like 35, I think. And then
Okay.
they do like 60 lifters, 70 lifters per day. And this meet is a 2-day event. So it's all men on the first day, then all women on the second day. And I think it's 60 each, which is pretty crazy.
Hmm.
And in terms of like my goals, my coach actually sent me the the goals that we have for this meet, and it's really, really awesome. Like a 560 squat, a 320 bench, and like a 630 deadlift. So I'm really excited for those. And the
So
training
is
seems
it
to be
is
going
it kind of
really well.
equal, like in between in like the lifts? Are you working on the lifts kind of like equally, or is there one you're prioritizing more, or how does that work?
Currently, so my coach Stu Locke from Kodiak Barbell, he's fantastic, and he's really good at like kind of like experimenting with his clients and with me. Um, he kind of figured out that like I'm really good at squatting, and I don't really have a lot of knee or hip pain. I got a little bit of hip and knee pain throughout the last meet prep because I just did a meet about 3-ish weeks ago,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of fun. And the hip and knee pain have gone away, but for doing the exact opposite, instead of taking away the squats and doing less squats, I'm actually squatting 3 times a week as opposed to only 1 time a week. And it's because my body just needed more activation of those muscles,
Hmm.
which is very, very cool.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
for
that's interesting because I mean, obviously, bodybuilding or powerlifting is it's a pretty intense sport. So I think injuries and sort of like
oh yeah.
wear and tear. That's part of the game, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, for normally people like to focus on bench more and they'll like bench 3 or maybe even like 4 times a week. But when I was benching three times a week, it was really messing up with my upper back and my shoulders. So we cut it down by a lot, which is crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. For me, traditional barbell benching just it beats up my shoulders for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Like I'll go through a period where I was, trying to focus on bench, and I haven't benched in a long time. I just kind of gave up on it to be honest. But when
Hmm.
I was trying to get those numbers up, in a matter of a few months of focusing on it, I would end up pissing off one of my shoulders and kind of have to
Hmm.
back off a bit. I think yeah, it just there's something about the shoulder is such a complex joint, right? So
Oh
there's a
yeah.
lot of things that can go wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, because there's like the scapula and then the subscap and then the lat and then the trap and they're all connected to the pec. And if your shoulders aren't like correctly aligned perfectly, if the stars don't align, when you're doing a max bench, you're gonna mess something up at some point, which
Oh, for
sucks
sure.
because it's such a fun exercise. And like a lot of people, like especially when I was younger, it didn't matter how much I squat or deadlifted at the gym. It was like, well, how much do you bench?
Oh, of course. That's like the gold standard of every young dude is just trying to get their bench up, right?
Yeah, it's like, man, get off the leg press. Show me how much you squat.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, like it's like that first time that you bench 135, you get one plate, right? That's just like that's
Yeah.
a pretty monumental moment in a young lifter's career, I think, right?
Yeah. And then when you get 225, it's amazing. And then it's like you can never get to 315 ever. You
Yeah,
still float so far.
after I was got two plates and I could move two plates for some reps, I was like, yeah, this feels good, but like I don't I don't have it in me to kind of like push for 315. I don't think there's enough, I would have to devote every single thing in my training life to try and just chase that number. And I was like, I don't even know if I'll ever get to that based on just my frame.
Yeah. And it's just like in terms of like percentages of like 225 all the way to 315, that's so much.
Oh
That
yeah.
is so much weight just on your arms, right? And like for someone who like isn't a power lifter, that's so far away. And then for powerlifters, like I've seen dudes that are like half my size. Like I have this kid, his name is Nate. He's 15 years old. He's 150 pounds, and he can already bench like 250. And I'm like, who are
That's
you?
insane. That is
Like
insane.
what? What are you drinking? What are your parents giving you? Right? And like he's just has this mentality of like I'm gonna be the greatest, and I'm gonna bench more than anybody, and squat more than anybody, and deadlift more than anybody. I'm like, oh, okay,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, some people are just wired for it. Some people just have those genetic advantages, right? And it's not, yeah, like that's the thing with strength too, right? It's not a proportionally in line with your muscle mass, right? It's that
exactly.
strength to body weight ratio. It's that central nervous system activation that some people just have naturally. They just start at a higher level than other people, right?
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So, in terms of your like current training, I'm kind of interested to know like because obviously with powerlifting you focus on the big three.
Hmm.
Um, what are some of the assistance kind of exercises that you are doing right now, and is that something that stays pretty consistent through your training, or like do those assistance exercises kind of switch up over time?
They've become consistent, but just harder over time. Uh, Specifically with like me, I need a lot of scapular movement so that my shoulders don't get all wonky. So I do a lot of like hand-do push-ups as an accessory, or like
Hmm.
deficit push-ups with like a
Okay.
protraction at the end. So like
Yeah.
I'll like really like bring my shoulder blades up to actually move them, which is super important. And like we just make it harder. So like a plate on my back, or like doing it for tempo time and stuff like that is really important. And a lot of like shoulder rotational stuff as well. So like face pulls, lots of rows. No matter if it's like a bench day, a deadlift day, or a squat day, I have at least one back movement just to make sure that like my posture is aligned and fine at the end of it.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
That's actually one thing I noticed that has really helped my shoulders, and I've had kind of like on and off shoulder issues going on just from like doing way too much pressing to rowing,
Hmm.
ratio when I was younger and first started training, and then doing martial arts, boxing and Muay Thai. Is a lot of, it's pretty shoulder heavy, obviously with a lot of punching movements and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
but doing just a shit ton of upper back work, just so many face pulls and, um, rear flies and whatnot, just constantly training that upper back. That's something I do almost every training session. I try and get just some blood flow there for sure.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what other assistance exercises are you found to be good for you?
Um, Still having like the like bodybuilding hypertrophy movements as well. Like a lot of people neglect isolation exercises, especially in powerlifting, like leg curls, leg extension. Doing like some form of like tricep and bicep exercise is really important, in my opinion, because like if you're having elbow pain and everyone's like, oh, it could be the shoulder, it could be the chest, it could be the back, it could honestly be the forearm, it could be the bicep, it could be the tricep, or like if you're squatting and your hip hurts, it honestly could be because your hamstrings are too weak to actually like take the load that it needs to take, even though your back and your glutes are working just fine.
Hmm.
So I'm a really big advocate of still having like 15, 20, or even like 30 rep sets on like the end cap of the session.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's one thing you definitely pick up on over time is kind of finding out that a lot of the problems are really they're more downstream than what you think, right? Just because you're feeling a pain or a weakness somewhere, it's a lot of times it's coming from somewhere else.
Hmm.
Like I know back when I still lived in Ontario, I went to uh, sort of like for physio and active release therapy, chiropractor type stuff. I went to this place called Active Relief Therapy. I don't know if
Yep.
you know them, but they're down kind of by McMaster area, and they were awesome with helping me with a lot of stuff. And I think they actually switched ownership now, but the original guy, RS, he was a powerlifter too, and he competed in powerlifting. So being able to go and see a specialist that actually understands lifting is just
Yeah.
so
Su-
huge
Super
because
important.
like you want to say like I'm doing this type of squat, here's where I feel the pain, and they just like immediately know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's such a big advantage, because I've been to other places for physio and whatnot whenever I have some issues and I'm trying to like explain an exercise to them and they're just looking at me like a deer in the headlights, like
Yeah.
what is training?
You're like, why
And
are you doing that? You shouldn't deadlift at all. It's bad for your back.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so he was really awesome. And I would have a back issue and he would kind of do all these kind of testings and stuff to see kind of, get to the root of the problem. And he's like, yeah, your foot is weak as shit. Like try and push this band this way with your foot. And I'm like, I can't do
Yeah.
that. And he's like, okay, well, that's what's causing kind of, the downstream pain of your back when you're doing this. And then I would just like strengthen that weakness and lo
Hmm.
and behold, the pain would go because other muscles in your body end up overcompensating for whatever the thing that's not firing and that's being weak, right?
Absolutely.
What do you squat and what kind of like do you do any kind of like the barefoot stuff at all to strengthen your feet?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I have feet spacers that I just wear at home sometimes. I don't do it as much because my feet feel a lot more wiggly than usual, which is good. And I only wear barefoot shoes now, which kind of like sucks because I have so many other non-barefoot shoes. But yeah, it's been a lifesaver for my feet and my knees and my hips. And I do a lot of like singular toe movements. So like just like move my big toe for like a minute, see how that feels, see if it puts any strain on my arch, and then move like my middle toe, and then just like go all the way down to the pinky and then go back. And then a lot of like towel pushing, a lot of towel pulling, stuff like that, just to make sure that my arch is good. Because I don't have an arch. I'm like completely flat footed. But then when I activate everything, it kind of like starts to work. And when I squat, everything feels different. When I deadlift, everything feels different. And like also even when I bench, if my feet aren't properly connected to the ground and I can't feel like my big toe all the way to my pinky toe, like my bench will be off. So like it's made my warm-ups a little bit longer, but at the same time it's made my training overall better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like when I see people training in like Jordans or just like kind of like running shoes with super
Yeah.
soft heels and soles, I'm like, man, you're missing out.
Yeah. I like absolutely hate it when people listen Jordans. I'm like, that's not what this is meant for. It's meant for basketball. There's no
Yeah,
lateral movement here. You're in one position.
yeah, exactly. I wear my barefoot shoes all the time. I just got some ones off Amazon. They're not super sexy looking, but honestly, who cares?
Yeah.
There's definitely some nicer ones out there, but they're super expensive. But I think I might invest in something like that eventually, just because I found myself wearing those kind of shoes all the time. And if I'm not wearing those, I'm wearing something with just like a flat rubber, something like a Vans or
Hmm.
Chucks or something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like for most of my life, I didn't realize, but I was trying to buy shoes earlier in my life for just comfort, and they were fairly wide. And then as I got older and I cared a little bit more about style, I would buy the style of shoes that had the like chisel toe. And then I realized like, wow, this sucks. And then I think the first time I saw wide toe shoes was the Squat University guy, and he was telling me and he was telling the world
Oh yeah.
about it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. I should switch back, and then I did, and then like my life has never been better.
Yeah, you went from like those back in the day when we all used to wear those like those skateboarding shoes, those really wide like DC skateboarding
Yeah.
shoes and whatnot,
Oh
right?
yeah, with like huge high tops and the crazy colors.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, now when I have to like go into the office or something and wear like dress shoes, I hate it. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, so terrible. I'm like, why? Why for comfort?
It's not
Like
good.
only for comfort.
Um, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's once you get into that kind of barefoot world, it's hard to go back for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about some nutrition practices as well. So kind of you touched on it a little bit. You mentioned you went, vegan for a while. Like,
Hmm.
what other kind of things has your nutrition journey taken you on? Because I know I've done a lot of the same things of just kind of experimenting and trying
Hmm.
new things, whether it's keto and intermittent fasting, whatever. I've been experimenting for a long time to try and find out what works for me. So just kind of curious, kind of for you, how that evolved over time.
Yeah, it was definitely experimenting of like, oh, I want to try this. Oh, I want to try this. Oh, the girl I'm seeing is eating this way. I'll just eat the same way so we don't have to make different meals or like trying to impress them for some reason. I don't know. But I did vegan,
Yeah.
I did vegetarian, I did keto for a while. I tried eating just red meat, um, which was the most expensive out of all of them. And I did learn a little bit from each thing, which is great. And now I live a pretty like balanced lifestyle. I'm currently trying to bulk to 100 kg, and I'm about 93.4 today. I'm working with a nutrition coach just to keep me in line because I do find that like if I don't have a nutrition coach, I kind of like count like 30% and then I'm just like free eating like 70%, and it doesn't really like
Yeah.
go well for me.
That accountability, right?
Yeah, 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 100%. Um, And I also found that like foods that bloat you are terrible. Like if you want to eat more or if you just want to stay healthy, feeling terrible in your stomach and feeling that pressure really, really off puts you to just either eat whatever you want or not eat anything at all.
Yeah. What are some of those foods that do that for you, like bloating wise?
So I use the FODMAP system that I learned from Stan Efferding, actually. Um,
Okay.
and I tried his like Monster Mash stuff for a while, which was actually fantastic. I do love bison. But I basically
What's
like,
his diet? I think it's called the vertical diet, right?
yeah,
Is that what his
yeah,
diet is? Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And I like tried it for a bit and it was really, really cool. It was just super expensive. It wouldn't be expensive in the US where he is, just because the Costco is way better there. But for us here, it's very, very expensive. But yeah, so the FODMAP system is basically like things that would normally bloat you, and then things that could bloat you. And so I started with eating literally just like meat and potatoes because I knew that those things didn't bloat me. And then I slowly started adding things. So I started adding a bunch of different vegetables to see what it was like. And honestly, it's super weird. Like spinach bloats me a lot, broccoli bloats me a lot, kale bloats me a lot, onions if I eat too much of it, cabbage 100% if I have like a little bit, except for sauerkraut, which I know is cabbage. And then
When it's
certain,
fermented or pickled or
yeah.
whatnot, that helps a lot with that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
Which is like fantastic. And I've been having at least some kind of fermented like food item every day just to keep my body in check in terms of like bloating, which is good. Uh, and yeah, it's honestly different from everybody, and that's something that I would honestly recommend of like figure out what bloats you, what makes you feel like crap. Because if you feel like better than 70% every day, that will feel really, really good for your body, and like your body will take that nutrition properly if there's no bloating.
Oh, for sure. And
Hmm.
and the funny thing is too, right? It's like it's some of those foods that most people would consider as being super healthy that sometimes are the worst for you in terms of like bloating and whatnot. And it's
Yeah.
a lot of that vegetable matter, right? Like I would do things like just have a massive, kale smoothie or something like that and thinking like I'm being super healthy and whatnot. And then I would just like feel like garbage after, just like
Yeah.
super bloated and just like no energy. And I'm like, I think this is supposed to make me feel good, right? Like
Yeah.
why is this happening, right?
Yeah.
But really just there's a lot of those that kind of plant matter, the leaves and stems of plants that, you know, can be damaging. And that's kind of like part of like the whole carnivore movement, right? Is just
Hmm.
cutting all that out. And for me, I don't cut out all plant matter because I think, you know, it's can be a little bit of throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of a
Yeah.
situation, right? Like if there is
Exactly.
some if there's some vegetables that you feel good after eating, like they're probably fine for you to eat, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps some of that variation in your diet, keeps a little bit more fiber in your diet, so why not? But
Hmm.
definitely for me, like especially like broccoli, that's a big one too. Especially if it's raw. Like if I steam it like really good, like it can be okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I just like I feel super bloated and gross after eating raw broccoli. So yeah, that makes total sense. And the fermented stuff too. That's been a big one for me. A big change in my diet too. I eat kimchi or sauerkraut pretty much every day.
Oh yeah. 100%. Something also that I've been learning about is like the bioavailability of food, considering your ethnicity. So like
Right.
my
Yeah.
girlfriend, when she eats pork, it doesn't sit super well in her stomach if she eats too much. Whereas like I'm from a place where like we literally only had like pork and chicken and seafood, and like my ancestors would eat only those three kinds of meats. So it feels good to me. But then if I have too much, like I eat like at least like one small steak a day just for like nutrition, just because a steak is really good for you.
Hmm.
And I've decided to spend my money on that. And like that is good. But then if I eat too much like beef, it does affect me in like a very, very different way than it would Amanda, because she's Scottish and Irish, I do believe, and they have a lot of cows there. Or like lamb. She's really good at eating lamb. Lamb does not sit good in my stomach at all. Like my
Really.
ancestors have never had that before in their lives.
There's no lamb and sheep in the Philippines at all.
I don't think so. Like whenever I have it, like I had it like I had like pan-seared lamb chops with just like salt and pepper, and I had it, and I felt like not sick, but I just felt uncomfortable. I was like, "What is this? This sucks. This tastes so good. Why is it hurting me?"
That's so true. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's one of those things like it just speaks to like it there's no one fit diet for everybody, right? Everybody is so different. Like everyone has such a crazy different biodiversity and genetics that you really it just you have to experiment on
Hmm.
yourself. There's no other way around it. Like you can use some of those, you know, more popular diets as somewhat of a framework, but at the end of the day you have to experiment and find out what works best for you.
Hmm.
And not fall into some of the like, you know, get like really religious and dogmatic, you know, with some of that stuff, like what tends to happen with, you know, keto people or carnivore or, you know,
Hmm.
vegans, right? You just kind of fall into this camp and you identify as that diet and it becomes part of your
Yeah.
identity, right? But it's like, do you eat this and do you feel good after? Yes or no, right? Like that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it comes down to. Like your body tells you um, if this is good for you or not. You should know that stuff right away. So like for example, like with the kale shakes, like that seems like a good thing, like this big
Yeah.
veggie shake. Like it seems like really good. Why do I feel so bad about this? Like I'm not going to ignore that. I'm just not going to do it anymore because clearly that doesn't work for me, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so kind of maybe go through like a little bit. You mentioned the steak and some other things, but what does a typical kind of day of eating look like for you right now?
Oh man, I eat so much food because I'm bulking. So my coach and me have been upping my calories slowly after the meet because I competed at 90 kilos, and now I want to be at the top end of 100 kilos. So that's about 220 pounds. I'm currently like 93.34, I think. I recorded it in the morning. But like every morning, um, I first make my girlfriend her eggs first because she leaves before me, and then I have four eggs, three slices of ham on a bagel, and then I get to work. And then all of my snacks, I have three different peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, all with their own banana. Um, I have, yeah, it's great. It's so
That's a lot.
fantastic. Yeah.
Sounds like
And then,
fun.
yeah. I feel like I'm at school. I'm just gonna eat so many good snacks.
Yeah.
And then I have a container of strawberries and blueberries currently. I like to switch up my berries to like blackberries or mango sometimes, but I always keep the strawberries in. It's my favorite fruit. Um, and then I usually have like rice and chicken or rice and pork as well here as my actual lunch. And then I go home and then I have steak, and then I have four more eggs, and then I have either potatoes or more rice. Oh, and then during when I work out, I have an intra workout, which is normally around 75 grams of carbs.
What kind of carbs are you using in your sort of peri-workout window?
Um, I use something called Carbolin, which is just like a carb workout, or I'll like if I'm feeling like I need a little bit more electrolytes, I'll have like a Powerade or a Gatorade, which has been working for me. Um, but I've been really getting into coconut water. Coconut water's been really awesome.
I
Um,
love coconut water.
yeah, it's just like I'll buy it and then I'll drink all of it in like 2 days. I'll buy like 12 and I'll drink six per day. And I'm like, that was too much.
Yeah, yeah, I
It's
get the
so much
case. I get
money.
the cases of it from Costco,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, same.
Kirkland coconut water. It's so good.
Yeah. And like I'll put like three in my backpack to bring with me for like to like leave in the fridge, and I'll have that for like each day for the first 3 days. And then I finish it on like when I'm there and I'm like, oh shoot, I'll put more in my backpack. And then I'll go home and then I'll drink three more. Just because it tastes super good. Coconut water is amazing.
Oh, it's so good. Like in terms of
Yeah.
just like, the naturally occurring electrolytes and whatnot.
Hmm.
And kind of even just like, kind of we mentioned eating to your, ethnicities. I'm pretty sure I, like coconut's one of the biggest exports
Oh
in the
yeah.
Philippines, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that I think it actually the like it says made in the Philippines on those bottles that I get.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. That and mangoes.
Mangoes, yeah.
Pineapples and mangoes are the two biggest exports from the Philippines, I think. Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not.
I eat a lot of fruit,
Hmm.
as well. So that Carbolin actually is that the brand name or is that a type of carb powder? I'm not sure. I think I've
That's
seen them.
the brand's name.
Okay.
It's just really like carb powder, like flavored. And I'm thinking about getting the non-flavored one so I can mix it with my coconut water.
Mm.
And then I would take like half a scoop of carbolin because the coconut water is like, it's not exactly 75 grams of carbs, which has been the sweet spot for me for energy. Because like I'm normally working out for 2-ish hours, sometimes 2.5, depending on what the main movements are and if I have like a heavier set that day. Uh, and I do take pre-workout, and then I have like a carb drink for the rest of the time.
Nice. Yeah. I'm not sure what kind of carbohydrate that is in the Carbolin.
Oh, I do believe it's dextrose, which is
It's
literally just like,
dextrose.
yeah, I
Yeah,
do
just
believe so.
sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have like a potato. They have a potato and rice blend. That's the other 50% of it.
Okay.
Hmm.
Have you ever tried highly branched cyclic dextrin?
No.
That's a good one. You should definitely try, give that one a shot.
Okay. Do
That's
you want to text that to me later?
Yeah, I will for
Cool.
sure. Because there's a certain way of measuring um, carbohydrates in terms of how quickly they basically pass through your system and empty through your intestines and basically get absorbed into your body.
Hmm.
Uh, if I forget what it's called, it's like osmolality rate or something, osmo something. So different carbohydrates they kind of digest at different rates. Obviously, how quickly they leave your stomach, right? So the longer a carbohydrate stays in your stomach, the more blood flow you need to the stomach, the more energy demanding it is. So during your workout, obviously, you wouldn't want to take something that sits in your stomach for a long time because it's taking up energy from your workout. It's taking blood flow that could normally be going to your muscle, right?
Hmm.
So I know that the selling point for highly branched cyclic dextrin is that it has a crazy high rate where it just like empties from your stomach so quickly and
Cool.
just absorbs into your body so fast that it just makes it such a really good intro workout carb because you don't feel it, you don't feel heavy at all. Um, so that's one that I've used intra workout, and I train pretty much always first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And I've noticed for me, even though I really enjoy training fasted, um, I noticed that like mentally it's good, but like physically I don't always have the best performances when I'm training
Hmm.
fasted. Like mentally I feel sharp and I feel good and everything, have energy, but um, sort of physically it's not always the best. And then I find that I tend to burn out a lot easier if I haven't had anything in my stomach pre-training.
Hmm.
So I've kind of started to add back in some of that highly branched cyclic dextrin, kind of like I'll take a little bit pre-workout and then kind of sip on it throughout my workout. And I've noticed
Nice.
that has a big difference. And I just use like an unflavored one. I think the one I get is from Canadian Protein. I think
Cool.
that's
Nice.
the brand. I think they're out of Windsor, I think.
Hmm.
Just a bag of that. So I'll send you a link for that, but definitely give that a shot as like an intro workout. I think it works really well.
Nice.
What other supplements are you taking if you're taking any other ones?
Yeah, creatine definitely, which I remember from when I first started training, it was like everyone was saying that it was a steroid, which is so funny.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. Um, I definitely take magnesium and zinc at nighttime. And I take a lot of vitamin D. I take a ton. Um, I was
Like
doing some
how many
research.
thousand IUs a day do you think you're taking?
I'm taking like 15,000 IUs per day.
15. Damn,
Yeah.
that's pretty high.
Um, my one of the coaches here, the athletic coach, his name is John Peel. He does all the like athletics for like the kids and stuff here. He showed me this like article in this research paper about how I don't know what country it is. I think it might be Brazil. They take a pill or they take a shot, and it's like 100,000 IUs,
Jeez.
and they take it, and then they don't take it for the rest of the year.
Wow.
And that's a place where like they always see sun and all like all that stuff.
Close
So
to the equator, yeah.
yeah. So I do believe that like as soon as I started taking this, I almost never get sick. I've only gotten sick once this past year, where I would normally get sick 3 or 4 times. And then one time I got sick, it was because it was strep throat, and strep throat is a whole other animal, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Um, um, but like I didn't catch a cold. I didn't like catch the flu, which I normally do. And I definitely think it has to do with like people being thinking that they're efficient in vitamin D when they're really not.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think yeah, vitamin D is huge. It's kind of it's one of those things that's like it's just the most bang for your buck, and it
Hmm.
blows my mind that more people don't take vitamin D. I actually said this in the last episode that I recorded with my buddy Giddy. It blows my mind when I hear that people are not taking vitamin D, especially if you live
Yeah.
anywhere far away from the equator, like we do in Canada. Obviously, we're pretty far
Hmm.
away, and it's so easy to take. Like it comes in drops. Like the pills are so tiny. Like
Yeah.
there's literally no reason to not take it other than just you're lazy and you're not like focusing on your own health at all.
Yeah.
But like the
There's,
recommendations that I've heard, like typically, and they're all over the place. That's the thing. It's hard
yeah.
to know with vitamin D because sort of there is that somewhat of a risk, I guess, for vitamin D toxicity because it is absorbed into your fat and you don't just like piss it out like you would,
Hmm.
if you had excess B vitamins or something like that. It's not water soluble. It's fat soluble, so it could build up in your fat over time. But yeah, like to your point, like there's papers showing kind of like crazy high amounts having like really good
Hmm.
benefits. Yeah, 15 sounds like a lot, but I mean, I think I probably take like anywhere between 6 to 8,000 IU's every day, which is
Nice.
is on the high end for what normal
Yeah.
recommendations are, anyways. But the more I kind of learn about vitamin D, the more I think it's more the vitamin D toxicities thing is somewhat of it's more of a myth than anything.
And like throughout my research too, like again with like ethnicity and where you live and where your ancestors are, like I'm from a place where like it's sunny all the time. So in
Yeah.
my opinion, I think like people who experience sun more, if they lived where they were, or if they lived where they were born, um, and then moved to a place where it's like here, like 9 months out of the year is like cloudy and snowy and rainy. So like normally someone like me wouldn't experience that. So I would need more vitamin D to feel a little bit better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid proven fact even that just people of either like African or South Asian, Southeast Asian
Hmm.
populations, they are the most vitamin D deficient, just living
Yeah.
in North America anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Anything else that you're taking? You said magnesium, zinc. I take magnesium before bed too.
Hmm. I don't know if you want to get into this, but I am taking TRT currently.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
No, like
Cool.
that's I would love to hear about your experience with that.
Great. So I am competing untested just because like I'm taking TRT. Um, and that would be super uncool of me to compete in a tested division.
Yeah, for
But when
sure.
I was like during my workout, like in powerlifting life, I started like, but before I had TRT, I started getting like more pimply, and I started getting like I have a little bit of gyno now just from what my body was doing to me.
Oh, really?
And uh, about when I was like 29, 28, my estrogen like skyrocketed. And I went to the doctor and I didn't know that it was my estrogen. I was like, oh, I think there's something wrong with me. Like, I feel like I'm going through second puberty. And when I was going through puberty, I didn't get pimples. I
Hmm.
didn't really get that stuff. And she was like, cool, do some blood tests. And my testosterone levels were like a normal low. So it was at the bottom end of normal. But my estrogen was like 50% more than it normally would be. So my estrogen was really, really high.
Hmm.
And from there, my doctor was like, hey, like, I think that you should um, put in like a request to have testosterone and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, totally. And from there, um, learning from my coach and stuff, because I thought about taking estrogen blockers instead, but estrogen blockers are really bad for your body because it's stopping you from already making something that your body wants to, versus me taking a very, very low dose of testosterone actually levels everything out. So my testosterone is the same. It's still like low normal, but my estrogen is like right there with it.
Right.
Hmm.
Interesting. So is that like through shots or creams, or how are you taking it?
Shots, and I
Yeah.
hate doing it every time I do it. I hate poking stuff in my butt, but it's like you got to do it. From like what I've learned, like the creams, they aren't really like they do work, but then like I feel like I would forget, and I would like kiss my girlfriend with my hands, or I would touch my son, and all of a sudden they're both growing mustaches, and I'm very confused.
That's funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
just like accidental TRT, secondhand
yeah.
TRT, right?
Secondhand TRT. Yeah.
That's funny. No, that's interesting because obviously, like, it seems like you had like a legit medical reason before, whereas a lot of people are doing it just for the performance side of
Hmm.
things, right? But yeah,
And like, yes, now that like I'm competing in untested, I do blast the TRT a little bit
hell
right
yeah,
before.
hell
Yeah,
yeah,
dude. Like I should be in the same spot as everyone else if I'm competing untested.
of
Like
course,
let's
yeah,
do it. Like let's try it out, which is really really cool. And really really fun. And I feel like that there's a really really big stigma and like blockage in between people who are untested versus tested. Because like in powerlifting, there's like IPF, which is all tested, and I have a lot of friends who are in IPF, and then there's like WRPF, CPL, and like a bunch of other divisions that do both. And there's a lot of stigma in between, like, oh, the IPF is the boring club, or like the WRPF is like the like the big boys club that like they all take tests and they have roid rage. I'm like, it's not like that. We
yeah.
can
Well,
all be friends. Yeah.
they're taking more than test for sure. A lot of
Oh
those
yeah.
guys,
Oh yeah.
they're taking everything, all the Mexican supplements, all of them.
I've seen those videos of people just walking around, going into pharmacy and just picking up like Anadrol or like Tren. Just like you just pick it up from the counter and you hand it to them. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? That's
Oh
crazy.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
I remembered last time I went to Mexico. Um, I just went for a walk kind of like outside of the resort.
Hmm.
There was kind of like a main street kind of like outside of the resort area and just kind of wandered into a pharmacy and it's all there just for the taking.
Did
I
you
was like,
think
wow,
just
this is
for a
crazy.
second, like maybe I should grab
N-
some?
No, because
What was your thoughts?
I would be way too scared about taking it on the plane back with me.
Oh, that's fair. I was thinking like I'll just like
Yeah.
do one shot right now, see how I feel.
No, I didn't even think about that, but I was like, man, should I get some of this stuff? And then just to like take it back and just kind of like just to have it in case I ever wanted to do it. But
Yeah.
um, no, I would I've that's like one of my worst fears is like I have, you know how like some people like don't like going to the doctor and just get like super angsty about going to the doctor. They just avoid it at all costs, sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? For me, that's like airports. I have like so much anxiety being in airports. I'm like, do I have? And this is obviously like now that weed is legal in Canada, whatever. It's like not as much to worry about, right? But like
Hmm.
just like, did I forget a joint or something in my backpack from like 3 years ago? Like, am I
Yeah.
going to get like sort of like the what's her name, the Brittany Griner situation, right, where she had just like
Yeah.
a the like a CBD oil canister or something in her bag, and she went to Russia, and then next thing you know, she's like going through that whole thing and almost
So
going to jail
crazy.
for like 10 years in a Russian
Yeah.
prison. I have that like irrational thought where like I just think I'm so stressed out about going through customs. So like that
Yeah.
would be my worst fear. So I wouldn't even think of doing something like that intentionally.
Hmm. I was traveling in
Or
Canada.
I've even seen some of those shows like on like I think on like TLC or whatever. I don't know, back in the day. Just I think it was called like Locked Up Abroad or something like that,
Oh
where it
yeah.
tells these
Yeah.
stories of people that just like end up getting into trouble in like a third world country and have to go to jail there. That just seems insane.
Yeah, so crazy. When I traveled to Victoria, BC, um, I was looking up online because someone told me that it was legal to have testosterone like in your carry-on as long as you like put it in the Ziploc bag so that they could see it. I was like, no way. And I did the research. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, that's true. So I brought it with me just so that like I would like stay like normal because I was there for about a week and I only brought like enough for like one shot and I brought one needle. And then like I was like it was the first time ever I was super duper nervous and they pulled me aside and I was like, "Oh, it's about the needle." And they're like, "Sir, what's this?" And they opened up my bag and it was my massage gun. And I was like, "Oh, that's my massage gun." And they were like, "Sorry, it's your gun?" And I was like, "No, no, no, it's my massage gun. It massages." And I showed them and they were like, "Oh, cool." And one dude looked at me
Yeah, you should
like
not
these
use the
other
G
two
word
are
at the
yeah.
airport. Just say stick with massager.
Yeah, it's my massager. And like one of the guys looked at me being like, "I'm so sorry for these other two. They have no idea anything outside of this. You may go. Sorry." Which is cool.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I
Hmm.
remember when we were kids, we were going on vacation somewhere, and my brother had this like this was like back in like the kind of early mid 2000s where everyone was when everyone had these like belt buckles, these like fancy belt buckles. Do you remember that kind of phase?
Yes. Yes.
Um, and he had this like grenade. It was like a grenade belt buckle,
What?
and he brought it, and it was like in his luggage. Yeah, it was like in the shape of a grenade,
Oh
just like
my
a flat
God.
metal belt buckle, like in the shape of a grenade, and he had that in his suitcase. Um, and we got pulled aside, and this guy was so mad. I remember this airport security dude who was so mad. He's like, "Do you have any idea like how much trouble like the bomb squad was literally on the way to the
Oh
airport
my
because we saw
God.
this grenade in your luggage?" Like it was, and obviously he's just a kid, he's innocent, whatever. My dad didn't like check through everything he packed for this trip. Um,
Yeah.
but just like yeah, I remember that being a pretty funny story. And I've definitely like taken like been worried about taking like a bag of like creatine or glutamine or like a bag of pre-workout or
Yes.
something on
Yes.
trips, just kind of like in an unmarked bag, right?
Did your dad check
That's
all of your
funny.
luggage like
But
afterwards?
I think he probably did, especially my brothers.
Nice.
Definitely lesson learned on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too about the gym because like that's awesome, and I think everyone who trains and gets into fitness like at some point fantasizes about opening their own gym. It's just like
Oh yeah.
I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of an allure of just having your own training space and owning a gym. So kind of interested about how that
Cool.
idea got started, how it all came together. Just kind of wanted to hear a little bit about that journey.
During COVID, uh, I was training at a different gym, and we would keep getting locked down in and out, in and out. And I think it was the third one out of five. On the third one, I was like, I'm just gonna start buying stuff and putting it in my basement because I lived in Bronte at the time, and I had enough space for like I had a whole basement. It was pretty large actually. It was like 600 square feet of just like empty space. So I started acquiring like a squat rack and stuff like that, and I started working out there, and I started posting videos of me working out, and then people started being like, "Hey, like, can I come by?" And it was kind of like the third one, and people started getting a little bit more lax, and I was like, "Sure, if you're not seeing anybody else, you can come by, and I'll just hang out upstairs." And then when it came time to go back to the old gym that I was working at, I actually accumulated enough stuff that it was like perfect. I had like a leg curl, leg extension machine. I had a cable machine. I actually had a whole set of dumbbells from like five all the way to 100. And I was like, maybe I should just train people here. So I started training people at my house. And then I only took on like half my clients because the other half didn't want to um, come back to the gym just yet, or they were like working out at the Y or like their local Good Life or whatever. And then when people started wanting to come back, I was like, I don't have enough space. And that's when I asked three other people if they wanted to start a gym with me. And I was like, there's no powerlifting gyms in Oakville that kind of cater to um, like the WRPF, like traditional powerlifting. Whereas IPF, it's all like the power bar, and then WRPF, CPL, they use a squat bar and they use a deadlift bar. And I was like, there's nobody really around Oakville, Burlington, Mississauga that do that close to us. So I kind of wanted to do that. And we also wanted to mix in group training and general fitness. And that's how it all amalgamated together. And I had a pretty good following in terms of clients. So it was pretty easy for all of us to say, like, yeah, this is a thing, we're doing it. And then from there, we slowly pivoted from being just like a private studio to being an open gym studio as well. So like we have so many powerlifting competition equipment. We like have enough to host two meets at the same time, in my opinion. We have so many things that we had to open our doors to other powerlifters and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that
Mhm.
sounds like a pretty crazy process. Like,
Oh,
what
it
did you
totally
find were
was.
some of the biggest challenges with all that?
Moving all the equipment is pretty challenging. Everything is like hundreds of pounds. Like we have a cable machine
Yeah,
that's a 8 station cable machine, and like I hated picking up those small stupid plates and stacking them into a truck, bringing them back, pinching my fingers on every single one. Um, the overhead isn't that crazy because it's an industrial complex, which is good. Um, and now it's all kind of just like easy living. Like it's kind of like fun. I had to hang out with my friends for most of the day. All of my clients are super cool. Um, and I'm just doing what I love. And you know what they say about like if you do what you love, you don't work a single day in your life. I really, really believe that now. I didn't think that was a thing. I thought that eventually people would get like tired of doing whatever they're doing. I'm not tired at all. I work like 60 hours a week and I feel like energized every day to do the exact same thing over again every week.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Hmm.
if you're getting energy from what you're doing, that's how you know you're doing the right thing for sure, right?
Hmm. Social media is really hard for me, to be honest.
Yeah. Eh,
Uh, I'm trying like a bunch of different things. I just posted that really stupid thing yesterday at nighttime. The thing about people dropping their headphones when they're deadlifting, which is like stupid, but I'm like, I think I'm gonna stick with this. People seem like to like it already. And I just gotta start posting more stuff that's just not me lifting, which is kind of where like Warbreed comes from as well, of like I need to separate myself who just likes to be joyful and play around and actually have some form of informative videos on like how to lift and why you're lifting a certain way.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's definitely a challenging thing, I think, for any business owner, any entrepreneur, is
Mhm.
kind of like trying to balance their day-to-day operations, but then also do their marketing and build their personal branding and all that stuff, right? Um, which I think you're doing a great job of it. Like, I think that video you posted yesterday, for example, was good. It's just that's what it's all about, man. Just like testing different
Mhm.
things and seeing what works, and just being just being personal, just being yourself, right? I think
Hmm.
once people get to know you more and whatnot, like, they can, learn how to lift from a lot of different people, but it's the people that, sort of like connect with you and your personality and your story, and that's what
Hmm.
makes a big difference. So that's why it's so important to share that type of content on social, right?
Yeah. Which is like, I believe that 100% because I do believe that like not one coach is the best coach for everybody. But then for some reason in my head, I'm like, people don't need my information. But that's just because it's me. That's more of like a confidence thing, in my opinion, of like, I seem to have, well, almost everybody seems to
Imposter
have
syndrome,
like,
right?
yeah, exactly. Everyone's got that. For me, it's like, I don't think people need to know the information that I have out because someone's already saying that thing. But then when someone asks me in person and I tell them, they're like, wow, that's super informative. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow. Like I know what I'm talking about. That's so crazy. It's like it's like I've been doing this for a few years, right? And it's
Totally.
kind of that like one of my clients said like they're the best coach that they've ever had recently, and they just did the meet uh, last week, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And I asked them why, and they're like, well, you just know how to talk to me. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Whereas like I might have a client that like I actually gave one of my clients to one of my colleagues here because his needs I couldn't cater to. And I thought that like I feel like they would vibe a little bit better anyways. So I was like, I think that you should go with Adam instead. Because Adam is he has more rehab side. I don't have as much rehab side. And that client he he tore his subscap and his rotator cuff at the same time, punching somebody. And then he has frozen shoulder on his other shoulder for using that shoulder too much because his other shoulder is whack. And I was like, yeah, that's not for me. I know someone who can help you better.
Nice.
So it's
Yeah.
also
And
knowing that as well. I went on a tangent there, sorry.
no, that's great. And I think another side of that too is um, when you work in a certain, industry, like you're working in the fitness industry, like obviously a lot of the people that you follow on social and that you interact with are also kind of related to that in the fitness industry. So you kind of
Hmm.
end up, I think, a lot of times in this like echo chamber where you're seeing all this great content from people in that industry and you start thinking, well, this is what everyone sees, right? But it's like that's not true. That's not what not everyone is like that, right? They don't, everyone has different sort of tribes of people they follow, social circles, and content that
Hmm.
they interact with. So if you're thinking about like people that are experts in lifting or even people that do train, that's like, the 1% of the population, right? That's not your average person.
Hmm. Exactly.
So that can be a bit of a mental trap that we fall into. Um, but yeah, you mentioned kind of like separating some of your personal stuff from Warbreed. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about
Oh
Warbreed, what that's
yeah.
all about, and how that got
Uh,
started.
we wanted to create like a online coaching service through Apex Barbell Club, but then we found out that there's already a Apex like powerlifting team in Ontario, which is kind of like, oops. We
Yeah.
didn't realize that this guy, because this guy doesn't really go by his like coaching service. He goes by his name, and we know the guy. We didn't even realize. And then when we realized that, we're like, well, we can't have like the Apex powerlifting team. We got to think of something else. And that night, I was at my parents' house, and my dad was just sifting through his t-shirts, being like, "Oh, look at this!" And he pulled up a t-shirt of like a rooster, and it said "Warbreed" underneath. And I was like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And he was telling me about it, and I was like, "Oh wow!" And like he used to raise fighting cocks back in the Philippines, and he
That's
would say
awesome.
like the war breeds are like the best fighting cock, and they're beautiful and they're majestic and like they fight till the end. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. So
That's badass.
yeah, right. I'm like, what? And I did some research on like fighting cocks and stuff. I'm like, wow, these guys are sick. Like, and I looked it up. There's no like powerlifting team by the name of like war breed, and like no one's used a rooster yet. And I was like, this is it. We found it. And another powerlifting coach that goes here, who I vibe with a lot. His name is Cole Gronwall, and he works in Toronto. He also comes here. He competed at one of the meets here as well. He was looking for like kind of like a thing as well to like bring his information to. So we banded together with with Apex to create Warbreed, uh, the Apex Team Powerlifting, and we made it that so that it's ATP, which is a molecule, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's yeah, and and from there, it's just like the online coaching portion and like the team that we have for powerlifting specifically, so that like everyone can feel like they're part of a team because powerlifting it is a solo sport. But then if you feel like you have a team with you all competing, all working together for the same goal, it makes it that much more fun. And the logo is pretty badass as well.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
sweet.
hmm
So in addition to having powerlifting meets at your gym, are you going to start a cockfighting ring as well, or is that
Yes, absolutely. I would 100%. I told my dad and he was like, "Oh, are you gonna do that?" And I was like, "No, illegal. Absolutely not." He was like,
No.
"Oh, that's okay."
Yeah, just get your dad to be like the ringmaster. I could just picture your dad being like the referee or whatever, just for
Oh
something
yeah,
like
he'd be
that.
so awesome. Yeah. He was telling me how like he would have to keep them in separate pens from like all the other like animals in general because they would just like kill the other animals. And like I was like, "Well, I was confused for a bit, being like, why would you want to do that?" And he was like, it's really just for the prestige. Like cockfighting is, and I didn't know this until I looked it up. It's this really, really old sport. It goes all the way back to like Greece, like Greco-Roman times, where they would actually do that as like an Olympic like side thing of like, hey, we're also doing this. It's like
Olympic
that's
side
so cool.
hustle.
Yeah, we're cockfighting as well.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean it's definitely animal cruelty, and there's a reason why it's illegal.
It's
But
banned now. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but that's pretty cool that
yeah.
he kind of came up with that. Is that big in the Philippines? Like, is that still a
Oh
thing?
yeah. Um, I think so. I'm not super sure. It was when he was younger. And a bunch of other types of animal fighting too, which is super weird. There's spider fighting.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, so like spider, like a centipede, and so my dad and his friends they would go out into the forest and they would find like a spider or like a centipede and they would capture it. And it's not like the like small spiders here; they're big, and they'll bite you. And they would capture them and they would bring their best spider that they caught from the forest. They would throw it into this bowl with the other insect, and they would fight each other. And whoever won, like they would get the money, and then the next person would throw out their bug that they caught. Is super cool. It's like that's the
That's
craziest
awesome.
thing I've ever heard. Yeah.
Yeah, like when it's so funny, like comparing that like from some other countries around the world to like here like teenagers and kids whatever were playing like battling like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or like Beyblades
Yeah.
or whatever, and then like in other
Yeah.
countries they're getting awesome spiders from the forest to fight each other.
Yeah.
Like that's so much more badass.
Yeah. It's so cool. When I heard that, I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, you used to do that. I was like, yeah, we used to get bit a lot. I was like, that's fair. That's
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah, oh for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know my dad too. Like growing up in the communist Czech Republic, like telling me these like stories of things of like they did as kids and whatnot, and just being like, yeah, that sounds really crazy. That would never happen here.
Yeah. That's super illegal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, that's sweet. I'm glad to hear you kind of branching off and doing that
Mhm.
sort of thing as well. So is the like having meets at your gym, is that something like an ongoing thing that you guys are doing? Or how does that work?
Yeah. We did one last year, and we're doing four this year. So, the way that the heads of the Ontario for WRPF are seeing it as most of the other meets are much bigger, but then they get filled really, really quickly. So we're doing the smaller meets, max 35, just because we have a smaller space. And that's good because then we don't step on anybody's toes. And some people like doing the smaller meets and they won't want to do a larger meet. Um, just in terms of like how long it'll be. Because like if there's 60 lifters versus 30 lifters, that's double the amount of time. And
Yeah.
some people don't like meets like that. So it's really, really good to have that difference in Ontario because there's a really, really big gap in powerlifting meets, especially for the untested side, where there would only be like one or two meets per year. And now through the WRPF, we have like nine, 10 meets, and they're all full. They're all like full, like to the brim, which is great because people want to compete. It's just there wasn't the space for it, so they would go to Montreal or they would go to the US because it's pretty close. But it's nice having this many meets here. And
Yeah, that's cool that people get sort of like an outlet for whatever they're training in, right? Like I'm sure
mhm,
there's a lot of people that they don't necessarily want to be a professional power lifter, like make any money from it, but they're just looking
mhm.
to compete just to like have some type of end goal for what they're training in their day to day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And 4 meets is a lot. It's a lot to do. That's like every 3 months.
That's a lot of
Um,
admin and organizational work, probably, right?
hmm hmm And then it seems hard. Well, like it is hard, and like we're like none of this would happen without one of the partners, Dave, his wife Michelle. She is a team manager for project team managers at her actual job.
Oh,
So
wow.
like her job is to rein in people. So it's really, really good having her on our team because if she wasn't here, we would be screwed every meet. We'd be like running around like with birds with no heads, just not knowing what's going on. But with her, it's made everything swim much easier and flow much better. But we might do three
What
next
was her
year.
name? What was the name you said?
Michelle,
Okay,
Michelle,
I think I might know Michelle actually.
Michelle Ing.
Yeah. Did she used to work at Iovate, right?
Yeah, 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 100%.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah, so she was a project manager at Iovate when I worked there too, actually. So I do know
Cool.
her from back in the
Nice.
day.
That's awesome. I didn't know you worked at Iovate. That's cool.
Yeah, I worked at Iovate for like 6, 7 years. That
Wow.
was how I got my start in like in the supplement sports nutrition industry.
That's amazing. I'm gonna mention her to you because we're going to escape room later today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small world, man, for sure. The
Yeah,
GTA.
that's crazy. Yeah. So, question for you then. W- Is there any supplement out there that's coming out that you think is like the new creatine? Not like it does the same thing as creatine, but like is going to be the new staple of like, oh, people have to take this if they're training.
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean the thing with creatine, what makes creatine so awesome is that it's the most highly studied supplement, right? Like it's been studied for like 50 something years. There's just not
Hmm.
really you can't really dispute it anymore. There's
Yeah.
no like all those kind of like myths about like back in the day, oh, this is a steroid, whatever. Like I think that stuff is pretty much going away for the most part. Um, and there's still good stuff coming out, like not only in terms of performance and bodybuilding and or muscle building, whatever, but like just like the cognitive benefits of it as well. Like people are taking it
Hmm.
just for brain health and cognitive longevity and stuff like that. So in terms of something getting to that level, I think that would be super challenging.
Yeah.
Um, I think, there would have to be so many years and years and years of not only studies, but just like anecdotal use from people, right? Um,
Hmm.
that's some of the best studies when people have been taking it for 20 years lifting and kind of like just sharing their the benefits they got from it, right? So
Hmm.
it would take a long time for something to get up to that level, I think. So yeah, to be honest, I don't think there's anything that will compare anytime soon.
Wow. Cool.
But I mean, there's always cool stuff that's coming out that's kind of on the cutting edge of sports nutrition. And I was never really on like the formulation side of things. I come from a marketing background. Um,
Hmm.
so I know like always like when I worked in the supplement industry, the guys who were involved in R&D and stuff like that, there's always really cool new papers coming out and stuff like that and exciting new ingredients and supplements. But I think really it always comes down to like is the bang for your buck really there, right? So like
Yeah.
with creatine, because it's been out for so long, it's such a commodity now that to just buy creatine monohydrate by itself, it's so cheap and it
Yeah.
has great benefits. It just like it's a no-brainer for like the vast majority of people to take it, right? Whereas
Hmm.
some of these like more novel ingredients, because they're not being like crazy mass produced, they're maybe covered by protected by like a single patent for a lot of the times. So they're so expensive. So it's like, is it really worth it to take this whatever like $80 supplement that's going to give me like another 2% boost in
Yeah.
my performance? Maybe
Hmm.
not, right? Um, because at the end of the day, supplements like a lot of time, especially when you first kind of get into fitness, people are like, oh, like that's the thing. Like, which supplements am I going to take? Like, I'm going to take this pre-workout, and this is going to be like the game changer, right? And that's kind of like how the supplement industry obviously wants to market itself, right, as being this big difference maker. But at the end of the day, like I'd say probably max, it's going to give you a little bit like a 5% boost, right? Like it's going to be sort of the cherry on the sundae, the icing on the cake of everything else that you're doing in terms of your diet, your training, your sleep. Like
Hmm.
that's everything, right? So, yeah, nothing super interesting. I think the stuff with like not super legal stuff right now, but like SARMs and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Those are kind of interesting because like they're all on the cutting edge, and it's definitely not something that I would recommend normal people take because there isn't a lot of great research behind it yet. It's
Yeah.
still
100%.
super
Yeah.
new and whatever, right?
Hmm.
But I think probably that's probably somewhere, where the cutting edge is. Like eventually they will find something, some type of compound that just has like really good performance boosting,
Hmm.
um, without sort of like the negative side effects that you would get from steroid use, right? So
Yeah.
um, that's probably where something will come from. But in terms of like natural supplements, I don't think there's anything that crazy that I've seen.
Cool.
Um, I think like one of the bigger ones that I've like been taking a lot is beef liver powder.
Yep.
Um, that one is like a really good, I think, just general sort of like a multivitamin. Like we talked about a little bit about bioavailability, for example. Like that's one that's going to be super bioavailable, where your body can actually absorb a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the B vitamins, the iron, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Whereas like when you're taking a multivitamin, especially like a typical classic like lower quality grocery store multivitamin, a lot of those
Hmm.
ingredients they're just like they're all synthetic compounds. So even though it says it has this much iron in it or whatnot, doesn't mean that your body can actually absorb that and use it properly, right? So
Yeah.
um, like I think whole food supplements for the most part are the way to go for a lot of things.
100%. Yeah.
And then vitamin D too, right? Like that's another game changer. That's just I think that's one where people are not taking it. They're just leaving so much money on the table in terms of their general health.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention that you got going on or you're working on right now.
Um, hmm. I don't know. Uh, we have another meet in August, August the 5th, and that'll be really, really fun. We keep getting better and better at it, which is really, really cool. Um, Other than that, like just lifting, being alive and having fun and being grateful for uh doing this, because like a lot of people they like
Yeah.
don't like follow their dreams, or they like don't want to, or like they think that like the thing that they fall in love with they can never do like forever, but like you can, like, and that's the biggest thing in my opinion is like if you want to be a musician you should go out and be a musician. Like it takes a lot of time. When I was in architecture and I finished the schooling and I went into the workforce, um, I was making pretty close to minimum wage, in my opinion. And I was like, I went to school for this, and
Yeah.
and then when I went back and I did personal training, it was kind of like I'm making the same amount of money, but I'm having fun doing it, which is where I want to be. And like slowly and surely, I started making more money, and it's like, oh, it's just when you're in your field, when people recognize you, all of a sudden you start making more money. So like being a musician, we can go back to that. Like being a musician, like you're not going to make a lot of money at the beginning. You're going to probably hemorrhage a lot of your money, which is which is what it would be like going to school. But then eventually, if you
Yeah.
start doing it more and more, and you do believe that you're talented enough, you eventually start making money at the thing that you love doing.
Oh, for sure. And
Hmm.
and that's the thing too is like if you try and settle, for something else or just do something that you're not passionate, you'll never be able to be really good at that thing because you're going to be
Exactly.
competing against other people in the marketplace, who not only are working as hard as you, but they also love it too, so it doesn't feel like work.
Yes.
And they will always outcompete you. They'll always win in the long run, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And that's another reason why I actually love powerlifting. It like doesn't. I don't hate working out. When I was bodybuilding, like I did love it, but sometimes I would hate it. But like with this, it's like it's always like, yeah, I get to work out today. This is sick. Or like if I would like, I tried playing volleyball for a bit, and that was a lot of fun. But then as soon as I signed up for like a tournament with my friends, I got really nervous. I was like, oh my God, this is the worst. What the fuck? Yeah. Like, why am I
That's
competing
funny.
against these people who are so much better than me, right? But
Yeah,
then in powerlifting, it's just been like every time I did a meet and I competed, I fell in love with the sport more and more, being like, yeah, like this is what like I love doing this, and this is great.
that's awesome. Yeah, it's super
Mhm.
important for people to find um, what they want to do, and just in life in general, but also in terms of fitness, I think that's super important because, I think when people first start kind of getting into training, they might have, preconceived notions about what fitness is, right?
Mhm.
I think, like, for example, I think bodybuilding is one of those things where when people think of fitness, they think of sort of bodybuilding style training because that's kind of, what popularized fitness kind of like in the 80s and 90s, right? Was like the
Yeah.
the Arnolds and the big bodybuilders and the Gold's Gym and all that kind of stuff, right? That took
Yeah.
fitness for the general population maybe to the next level, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing too. Is like that's what I say all the time. Is like if you don't like working out, if you don't like exercising, it's just because you haven't found a way to do it that you enjoy, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not there's not one path for everybody. Like some people might not like going to the gym. Awesome. Have you tried mountain biking? Have you tried
Yeah.
playing a sport? Have you tried? There's so many different ways to exercise. You have to find a way that makes it fun for you because otherwise you'll never stick to it, right?
Yeah.
You can go to a gym and
100%.
you can find a trainer and whatever, and you might do it in the short term and get sort of get some gains, get in a little bit better shape in the short term, but you're not going to stick with it for life, and that's what really matters is how do you stick with it for the long term, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And like, I did try like almost everything. Like, I tried like volleyball. I do want to play again just because I did find it fun, but I'd never want to compete in a tournament because I was just nerve wracking. Um, but I tried basketball, which I do like. I'm just not good at. Um, I tried golf, and that was the most angering thing I've ever experienced. That was so incredibly angering. I tried tennis, which was fun. Squash, it's a little bit too violent for me. Um, I tried bowling, and that was just like, why am I trying to do this as a sport? This is bowling.
Is that a sport?
Yeah,
That's
like,
question. That's
yeah,
quite it's
totally.
questionable. Question. That's where you get into that gray area of what is a sport and what is not a sport.
Yeah, like darts, speed walking. Those are those are sports in the Olympics, but powerlifting isn't. Powerlifting is not a sport in the Olympics, but speed walking is. Which is like, what? Come on.
That's weird. Yeah, who makes
Yeah.
those decisions? Um,
I
even
think
like
it's more.
golf, for example, like that one is a
Yeah.
little bit like I understand that you have to be like, like nowadays especially like golfers are, they take care of their bodies and whatever, but
Hmm. Hmm.
like if I don't know, like if my dad is like playing golf and my dad is like not, in any kind of great shape or whatever, and like he can still
Yeah.
do it into like his, into his 60s and he can still do it at like a decent level and stuff like that. Like how much of a sport is that? Whereas like he had to quit soccer like 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
because he couldn't do it anymore because it was physically demanding. Like that's part of what
Yeah.
being a sport is. There has to be some like, physically demanding piece to it. Like where do you draw that line between what's a sport and what's a game? That's hard to say.
Yeah. Uh, One thing about like the IPF being the like boring powerlifting division, which I don't believe. I love the IPF and like I love the CPU, and a lot of my friends are in the CPU as well. And like they have like electric times when they go to meets and stuff like that. Um, the IPF tries to be so like clear cut and normal because they're the federation that wants to get powerlifting into the Olympics. Because a lot of other sports don't take powerlifting seriously, right? So like they're like, yeah, like that doesn't have to go onto the roster in the Olympics because we're gonna choose this different one. We're gonna choose speed walking. We're we're gonna choose pole dancing, which pole dancing is actually super duper crazy. I would never be able to do that. I would break my neck. But yeah, so like they're trying to make it as formal and as like serious as possible so that like the whole entire world and the whole entire fitness industry takes powerlifting more seriously, which I think they're actually doing a pretty good job of, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't see why. something like Olympic lifting would be than there, and not powerlifting really.
Hmm.
Like they're both they're both different. Like they both have very specific rule set, very measurable. Like I don't see why
Hmm.
not.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, too, like I don't know what your opinion is on this, but in terms of some of these natural, these tested competitions, like how well can they really police that? Like there's got to be people in there that are cheating for
Oh
sure,
yeah.
right? Like to beat those tests. Like there's no way, like even like the highest level, USADA, Olympic testing, whatever, like even people
Yeah.
find ways to cheat that. And they're like showing up at your house at 5 a.m. to take blood tests. Like they're
Yeah.
not doing that for like your average person who's just competing in a power lifting meet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Which is like there was that whole entire like upset in like Russia or about Russia where like they were like we're gonna drug test all your team members and Russia was like no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like that whole hubbub because they still got to compete anyways. And everyone was mad about that. But yeah, I do agree. They should just have an Olympics where everything is untested. Like take whatever you want and just let's see how far the human body can go, right? Because like
Yeah.
that would be the wildest thing ever. Like imagine a dude like who looks like he's a power lifter and a bodybuilder, but he's doing javelin and he's just like dominating just like 1,000 yards all the way down.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
Just
so cool?
throwing it out of the stadium.
Yeah. Or like a guy who shock puts and he throws it through a cement wall. Wouldn't that be insane? I would
Yeah.
love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
and because like so many of those people are cheating and finding ways to cheat anyways,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like the people that are cheating, I think will always be one step ahead of what the tests can find, right? That's the thing is because
Yeah.
the tests always have to catch up to like
Hmm.
what's the new latest compound, right? Because the people that are developing that stuff, like, kind of we talked about like the SARMs and whatnot, they're always tinkering with those things and they just
Hmm.
change one molecule on something and it's a little bit different and a test can't pick it up or something like that,
Hmm.
right? So they'll always be one step ahead.
There's a documentary. I don't remember what streaming service it's on, but it's about this guy who basically gets taken through, and he does it himself. I think it might be cycling. It could be like it might be cycling. I watched it a long
Oh,
time ago.
Icarus.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
I've seen that.
Oh, is it cycling that he does?
Yeah, yeah, he does cycling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just like how easy it is to just like get past. Just like man, like everyone can be doing that. There was a large controversy and a huge rumor in powerlifting that um, when you were going to be drug tested, they would tell you 2 months out, so you would wean out, so that the like top players could still play. And that's been a super big rumor that's been going around for like years, especially in the U.S. Because the U.S. they're some crazy fucking animals. But that's all just hearsay in my opinion. Like, because like that could be true, 100%. But also like, if that's never actually been proven, then it's just people being butthurt about like them being better than that, or like that person being better than them, right?
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I don't know if you saw it, but there was this competition called SBD Sheffield, and it was like the top players all over the world in powerlifting
No,
competing. Oh my God, this guy, he deadlifts like over 1,000 pounds, like easy. Like it was like normal. It was like a normal day for him. His name is Jesus Oliveira. Fucking wild. And like powerlifting has gotten so crazy, like especially since people are taking their nutrition and their care and their mobility so seriously that like they can like powerlifting is becoming more of a lifelong thing, which is cool. And I don't think any of those people are on steroids only because they would die probably right after, right? Like steroids
yeah.
has so much stress on the body that like you wouldn't be able to handle that amount of stress for that long, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why you're seeing a lot of these like pro bodybuilders pass away in like their 40s and
Yeah.
50s. A lot of
Hmm.
even a lot of younger guys too that are competing, right? Like it's super dangerous for your health, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good, man. Glad to hear
Cool.
got a lot going on with the coaching and the shows and everything. So
Hmm.
why don't you tell
Thanks,
people
man.
kind of, where they can find you, and I think we'll wrap it up.
Oh yeah. You can find me on my Instagram. It's the Power Daddy. The reason it's called the Power Daddy is because I have a 7-year-old son, not because I want people to call me daddy. It's been an ongoing thing, especially at meets. People are like, "Oh my God, you're the Power Daddy," and I'm like, "Just say my real name. You know my real name. It's on there." You can also find my gym at Apex Barbell Club on Instagram, where we have a website, apexbarbellclub.ca. And you can find me and Coles and the Apex Barbell Club powerlifting team on Warbreed ATP. Um, and if you have any questions for me or questions at all, you can contact any 3 of those Instagrams, and one of the people who are experts will be able to help you out.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. It was a good chat.
No problem. See you again soon.
Okay, see you, buddy.
See ya.